All right, welcome everyone. My name is David Bernay, and I'm the Director of International Admission at St. Edward's University here in Austin, Texas. And I'm excited to welcome you all to our weekly edition of our Friday in Focus seminar. And today's topic is going to be environmental biology and climate change, which is going to be a new bachelor's program at St. Edward's this year, which is very exciting. And so we're here with some of my colleagues from our Department of Natural Sciences, Dr. William Quinn, Dr. Michelle Green, and Dr. Elijah Wostl. I'm going to actually now, before I hand it off to Dr. Quinn, I want to do a couple housekeeping notes. After the presentation is completed, we'll open up for question and answer. So feel free, because this is a webinar, feel free to send your questions through the Q&A tool, and we'll be happy to field your questions to the presenters. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Quinn.
Thank you, David. And I want to echo what David says. We are very excited about this degree, and we're very grateful to you folks who have joined us today. And I will now say who we are, and I'll let us talk about ourselves a little bit. We do, as David says, we do have Dr. Michelle Green, Dr. Elijah Wostl, and I am bringing up the tail end. So Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Green, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how I ended up at St. Edward's. When I was an undergrad, I was pre-med because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Went through the whole pre-med spiel and got to my junior or senior year and took a behavioral ecology course. And it really just changed the way that I looked at the world. And I thought, hey, this like ecology and environment stuff is pretty cool. So I went on and did a master's degree, and I studied carnivorous plants, which was a lot of fun. And then I went out into the real world for a little while, worked as a naturalist, but ultimately decided that what I really wanted to do was teach at a university. I really enjoyed teaching and sharing my passion for biology with others. So I went back and got my PhD. And I did research on urban ecology, so environments in urban areas and how they affect the growth of plants that are native to that area. And after my PhD, I took a few jobs teaching in various places, but I was really lucky enough to come to St. Edward's, where there's such an emphasis on teaching excellence and sharing knowledge with students. And so I'm excited to be the lab coordinator for freshman bio, one of the lab coordinators, and I also teach freshman bio here at St. Ed's.
Thanks, Michelle. Dr. Wostl, you want to go?
That's me. Hi, everybody. My name is Elijah. Unlike Dr. Green, I never thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I have always loved the natural world around me. So my earliest memories are from probably splashing around in puddles, trying to catch minnows that were stranded there. And that has continued with me. I took a bit of a circuitous route here. I received my bachelor's in ecology and environmental biology from the University of Colorado. But instead of going straight into a graduate program from there, I started working for the Colorado Division of Wildlife, studying bats. And then I moved to the island of Guam, where I worked on the brown tree snake, which is this invasive snake that has been introduced to the island and wiped out the native birds. I did that for about 3.5 years before I came back to the mainland, started a graduate school. And in graduate school, I spent a large amount of time on the island of Sumatra in Asia, chasing frogs, which is the easiest way to explain it. And then as a graduate student, one of your tasks is to teach courses as well. And I found that I really, really love teaching. And that is how I ended up at St. Edward's.
And this is William Quinn, or Bill. I have some things in common and some things different from my two colleagues. My degrees are in forestry from Colorado State University and North Carolina State University. But what I want to focus on is what we have in common. And what gets us up every day and gives us energy is that we love working with undergraduate students. And there's a really strong focus on that at St. Edward's. That's why we are here. Let me tell you a brief little bit about the university that you may or may not know. We were founded by an organization called the Congregation of Holy Cross, named after a city in France or a suburb in France. They were established in the wake of the French Revolution, and their entire mission has been and always will be to serve marginalized communities. And this degree is especially important to us, and it is about time that we're offering it because, as you almost certainly know, climate change is strongly skewed. The effects of climate change are strongly skewed toward affecting people who have less access to resources than those that don't. So this degree is in perfect harmony with our mission and the Brothers of Holy Cross's heritage. It is also part of our mission statement, requires us to provide our students with a very strong background, in this case in the natural sciences. And so it's also aligned with our mission in that it is very, very strongly based in a real good foundation. And finally, what we like to think is that we can provide students with degrees that will give them a step ahead in their professional career. And so I want to go on to just a couple of slides without going into too much detail on either one of them about how this does that. As we were considering this degree, we said, what happens nationally? This is from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. What's going to happen nationally for people who pursue degrees in this particular field? And I see what it has done in the past. That's not sustainable, but any line that goes like that is very good news for people who are approaching this kind of a program. It's kind of depressing because climate change will be unrelenting for certainly my lifetime and probably your lifetime as well. So the good news, bad news is people with expertise in solving problems that are related to climate change, unfortunately, will have a great deal of job security. There is a regional view. Again, the details are too many details, but what you're looking at here is something in the South Central United States. You can see that there's a nice projection for continued growth in employment in this area. So I have a couple of slides about what the degree might look like, and I'm trying to not give you too many details about what is in the degree. That's for later. But what does it look like? Well, one of the things we try to do at St. Edward's is provide students with modern technology that is not available at larger schools. Where we all went to school, we might have had access to something like this as graduate students, but it's uncommon for students at undergraduate institutions to have access to modern, powerful equipment. We have a real nice endowment that allows us to provide this kind of equipment. That's a photosynthesis analyzer. We are also graced with a lot of benefactors who help us provide physical resources like a relatively new building with 2 state-of-the-art greenhouses on top of it, so we can do controlled experiments. And we also have a budget whereby we can go out to areas that are affected by climate change. And you're looking at people here who are taking a look at low-lying coastal areas. It's obvious what needs to be studied there and how we can mitigate the effects of climate change there are extremely important. I promised you some details. When I say that this degree has a strong foundation in the natural sciences, let me first begin by saying St. Edward's is a liberal arts institution. I told you I went to Colorado State and North Carolina State. Those are not liberal arts institutions. They're great institutions, but I neglected a part of my education. And I want to encourage you, no matter what you're considering doing, please give strong consideration to a liberal arts program. Don't do what I did. This is where you learn how to think at the same time as learn a whole lot of good information. Well, while you're getting a liberal arts degree at St. Edward's, you'd also be getting in a core program, there will be other credit hours added onto this, a total of 68 credit hours in the biological sciences, chemistry, mathematics, computer science, and environmental science and policy, just like the bullet says. This is a real strong science-based degree. That's one of the things that distinguishes it from other similar but not the same degrees. This one's much more strongly based on science than other degrees. This degree is also somewhat unique in that it includes an expeditionary approach. Austin, Texas is located within about 25 miles of 4 of the 10 life zones of Texas. Texas is big, and to be able to visit different ecosystem types right from our campus in a very short drive is a real blessing. And Dr. Wostl is going to talk about that kind of thing in just a minute. But in addition to that, life zones in Texas provide a really good context, but we're trying to get a national and international scale to our studies as well. And we have experience taking students on relatively long 2-week, 3-week, 4-week, 10-week classes or research experience to other places nationally and internationally. It's required in this program, at least a 2-week session outside of Texas. It's also unique in that it requires a year of research, one-on-one with a faculty member. Dr. Green will talk to you some about that, and then both Dr. Wostl and I will fill in some holes. And then, in spite of all these hours, this is still customizable so that you have a lot of choice. Students have a lot of choice in how they can direct the fine-tuning of their degree. If they want to study abroad, can they do that? Yes, that's built into it. So I'm going to back out now. Dr. Wostl is going to talk about some of the resources that we have available to the program relatively close. Elijah?
Yeah, so one of the objectives of this program is for students to be able to understand and analyze the living world around them at every scale, from the molecule to the ecosystem. And from the ecosystem end of it, as Dr. Quinn mentioned, Austin is amazingly well located. Within a 45-minute drive, you can access pine woods to the east and the hill country to the west, which are radically different environments that are reacting and responding to the pressures of climate change in a unique way, right? How this is great for students is that it means we have access to these sites, right? And St. Edward's aims at providing an experiential learning experience, to be redundant, which means that we emphasize hands-on engagement on the part of the students through field trips, through classwork, and through working closely with researchers. And when this diversity of ecosystems is available nearby, it makes that process amazingly easy. Even better than that is that within 10 minutes of campus, we have a research center established at a 227-acre wilderness preserve. This is set up so we can regularly visit with students to explore the concepts we address in class, to conduct research, or have students pilot and work their own research programs. It's known as the Wild Basin. It's shown down the lower right. This just situational resources are almost unmatched. And then if you go just a little farther, right? If you just want to spend a few more hours in the car, which is infinitely accessible, right? We can reach the Chihuahuan Desert, some of the remnant palm forest in South Texas, the region in between, which is known as the thorn scrub, which is aptly named, but still a unique ecosystem. And I think one of the powers of having this many ecosystems accessible to you is it puts the the impact of climate change in a comparative framework, right? So each of these is going to be responding differently to the changing climate, and it's available for us to reach and investigate and have students investigate with us.
Can I jump in, Elijah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a picture of one of the waterfall, the major waterfall at Wild Basin. Wild Basin also includes at least 2 endangered plant species, and it is the nesting site for the golden-cheeked warbler, a federally designated endangered bird species. So this is the second slide about what the degree looks like. Yes, we're going to do a lot of controlled experiments in greenhouses and labs. And yes, we will use a lot of modern equipment, but we also try to do a breadth of studies. And so what you're looking at here is in the bottom right-hand corner, we're looking at relatively narrow focus on the impact of climate change on the success of invasive plant species as they disrupt local ecosystems. That kind of thing plays into, and that is certainly affected by climate change. That kind of vegetative change affects what's in the middle on the left, the browser or the consumer group, and we can study the effects of climate change there. And what we do study for sure, both very locally and at greater distance, is the impact of climate change on the frequency and severity of devastating forest fires. It's not all outside. A good deal of it has to do with literature review. We are very serious about helping our students learn how to do science in a way that includes them in published research. There is some lab work available and encouraged. And then there's a lot of computational modeling that goes on as well. So it's everything you can think of. One of the things St. Edward's entire biology department is known for is the ability of our students to produce high quality research. Sometimes the students I work with in my research lab are juniors and seniors. But let me explain something about research. You just don't walk into somebody's lab and say, I'm ready for research. This is a behavior and set of skills that you develop over a long period of time. And if we waited until somebody's junior or senior year, we wouldn't be doing them a service and we would not be happy at all. So yes, we will do a lot of research, and we network with our colleagues outside of academia where we can place our students doing research with them. But student researchers are developed at St. Edward's from very early on. And Dr. Green's going to talk about how we do that.
Yes, so as lab coordinator for the GenBio Labs, which are your freshman biology labs that you would take, I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Our labs are what we call CURES. So CURE stands for Course-Based Undergraduate Research Experience. So what this means is that in our freshman biology labs, we have 2, one in the fall semester and one in the spring semester. We spend the first half of the lab learning about concepts and topics and learning how to collect data. And then in the second half of the lab, you actually design your own research project, go out, collect your data, analyze it, and then present it. So it's a full research experience that you get right from your first semester in biology at St. Edward's. And what we're looking at here in the top left is one of the many creeks and natural areas that we have in Austin. So Austin, the city of Austin itself is pretty awesome because it has lots of designated natural area, green belts and green spaces. And so what we focus on in our GenBio labs is water quality of these creeks and streams in the Austin area. So in the fall semester, we take a look at pollutants like nitrate and phosphorus and how they might affect the algae and chlorophyll levels in the water. So what you see on the right is actually one of my labs of students out at one of the creeks that's actually within walking distance from campus. It's like just north of campus. And we go out, we learn how to sample for these things. We take the samples back into the lab. We learn how to analyze it. And then, like I said, in the second half of the semester, you develop your own research project plan and execute it. And we help you along the way to become a good scientist. In the spring semester, we focus on biological indicators of water quality. So in the lower left-hand corner, you can see lots of agar plates there. So it involves taking water samples and plating for bacteria to get an idea of coliforms in the water and other bacteria. We also look at periphyton, which is the algae, the slimy stuff that grows on the rocks. And we look for macroinvertebrates like this mussel that we found in one of the creeks nearby. And so I personally think it's quite a lot of fun doing these freshman bio labs, because you get to go outside, be out in nature, all the while doing real science. And the other aspect of the course-based undergraduate research experience is that these are real research questions with unknown answers. And so this is applicable to the city of Austin and the other governmental organizations that are helping to contribute to water quality issues in the area. So even from your very first semester at St. Edward's, we're kind of preparing you for this research experience.
In an opening slide, I talked about the strong scientific foundation for this degree. There are pictures that speak enormously about that. These, when I was in a freshman biology lab, and there's nothing wrong with this, I learned a lot, and I can tell you about the maxillae and mandibles of a grasshopper and do all that kind of stuff. That's awesome, but I never was taught to do science. It was never developed in me. This is one of the things I'm proudest about, and I think it has the most far-reaching impacts, our freshman biology sequence. Well, this does set you up for research, advanced research, with a variety of people. We decided to put in some slides for 4 or 5 of us. We have one of the best undergraduate bioinformatics programs in the biology department at St. Edward's. Bioinformatics takes a quantitative approach to modeling populations and communities. What we typically do with it is model a part of the community most people don't think about. When we look at forest fires and we see, oh gosh, that really hurt the above ground vegetation, very few people pay attention to what's going on underground. Well, there's a lot of biomass underground, and biomass is going to be strongly impacted by the entire community. So if I see plant roots, they're not living alone. They're living in a mutualistic relationship with lots of things. What is the impact of climate change on those dynamics? We try to get as complicated as we possibly can, and yet do it in such a way that this is a very successful program for undergraduates. I happen to do the above ground stuff. And again, a lot of my work is controlled work about what happens if you change the temperature here, what happens if you change the water availability regimen to a plant's abilities to respond. That's a controlled environment, and that's a really good kind of experiment to do. But you can make more general conclusions about it if you go out into the field and try to extrapolate from the controlled environment to the field environment. We have a colleague who's an invertebrate biologist. He takes a look at the entire invertebrate world. He doesn't put it on this slide, but he's especially interested in kind of the esoteric concept of, why do spiders have 8 legs? Because they can lose a leg and not be any worse off. That's called autotomy. And that is just one case of how those spiders in particular allocate their energy. Why, what strategies, they're not conscious strategies, but what strategies are these organisms making to allocate their energy? He also is a beekeeper, and he's very interested in environmental effects on immune functions in invertebrates. And he's especially interested also in predator-prey interactions and how that might be affected by climate change. I know a guy named Elijah Wostl, but he's going to talk about himself instead of me.
So really quickly, what I work on are amphibians and reptiles, and how they are interrelated. And more importantly is how the environment in which they evolved both geologic and climatic, has shaped those relationships. The formal study is known as phylogeography. This is usually examined in a historical context, right? So the Hawaiian Islands formed, and you see this neat speciation pattern of the birds on each island. But the impacts and the changes that are happening today and have been exacerbated in the past 50 years have dramatically altered the composition of populations, how those populations are able to move from one point to another. And what I'm interested in is, what are the larger effects of that? And can it be quantified and measured? And I love it. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's.
As I'm looking at that, these kind of interrelationships underpin the entire biological world. And so as climate change certainly will impact the frequency of major storms, and you see it on the news, it's these very subtle changes in relationships within communities that are extremely important and often overlooked, but really good to study. There's the reason this slide is in there is two things. We're looking to round out the expertise we have, and there are several other members of our department with whom you will be doing research, but we are looking to round out the breadth of research opportunities we can provide. And so we are currently, the three of us are currently part of a search team looking for yet another faculty member to support this program. That is also important for another reason. You may have read or be reading about how universities are negatively impacted by the change in what's going on socially, especially with the pandemic. St. Edward's has committed a new position to this program. So the university is definitely buying into this and is supporting it for the long term. And I am as happy as I can that they're doing that, honored to be serving with Michelle, Elijah, and everybody else in my department and across the university. Again, it looks fun. You do have to do some field work, and field work can take you into some surprising places, and you run up the back end of a moose. But a lot of science is repetitive. So this is a former student who's doing a review or a study about the effectiveness in a different set of green roofs and their ability to absorb rainwater that comes in big bunches and not very frequently. But the thing I'm trying to get across here is, if I could step back, there are 48 of these white boxes. A lot of science is repetitive. You got to say, well, let's look at it now. Let's do another replicate, do another replicate. So we do good, serious science there. We do things outside of the lab, outside of the field, and outside of the classroom. We support community involvement, a host of things there. Those are organizations with whom we work. We have student chapters of many of these things, and our students are highly engaged in many of them. This is a very small set of the opportunities available. Our students have worked in these and many, many, many others, even without this degree plan. So now that we have this degree plan, we're looking forward to collaborating with the people. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is the second largest environmental organization in the world, second only to the US Environmental Protection Agency. The deputy director of the TCEQ, the person who's second in charge, is a graduate of our program. We have graduates in it without the degree in almost all of these organizations, and that's part of the network. This and more are part of the network that's available to you. Program details. Oh boy, let's look at that for a long time. Let's look at that for a long time. Let's look at that for a long time. The details are there, people. There is a structure, and we would be happy to provide information about those details, when you take particular classes, when you should be thinking about what internship, all kinds of things in there. But most important thing we can do is provide a way for you to reach out to us. And that's what this slide is about. So that about wraps us up. David, Michelle, Elijah, you got anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think that was very thorough. Thank you so much to all of our presenters for this great content and great information about this major. This is a great time for our students out there. If you want to ask some questions, so our presenters can give you some more information about the program. Are there any questions we can help answer? And if not, I have a question for you, Dr. Quinn. Perhaps for a student who is not sure that they want to major in this subject right now, what is a good way to go about learning more about this area of studies? Maybe an introductory course that they could take upon coming to St. Edward's.
Right. One of the interesting things about this degree is that the specialization begins mostly in the second year. And so what students would take in the first year are relatively well distributed. Remember that the whole degree is based on a broad array of science courses. So the commitment to a specific degree can begin the first day somebody walks in, but it doesn't have to. Right now, I'm advising students who are in their getting ready to go into their second semester of their second year. They're changing into this degree from something else, and I'm telling them, no, this is flexible. You can do this and still graduate in a reasonable amount of time. So the short answer that I should have provided is that we try to provide a broad fundamental background early on, and there's not a whole lot of specialization going on until the sophomore year.
For students who are interested in getting involved in climate change research or environmental biology research, what do you suggest for them to do while they're in high school to prepare for the types of things that you're going to be doing at St. Edward's?
I'll go ahead and answer to take Michelle and Elijah off the hook, but you guys, you have to answer as well. One of the things I would do is get ready to be reading technical literature, but don't get too engaged in the technical literature at this point in your lives unless it is really easy for you. Learn about the myriad of the issues that are involved and the science behind those issues. I don't want you to hear me say, go out and read some peer-reviewed technical papers. You can if you want, but the thing to do at this stage in your lives right now is to learn about the science behind it at a relatively broad level. Understand the scientific basis of what these problems are. Don't just memorize bylines.
Yeah, I would follow that up by saying basically what Bill is saying and say, just pay attention to the news, pay attention to what's going on in the world. You don't have to track down all the scientific papers, but paying attention to what policy changes are being made and starting to think about the fact that people who are in power in the legislature are the ones who are making policy decisions that are going to affect climate change, and just kind of start putting the pieces together, how everything is interrelated. And then when you get to St. Edward's in your freshman biology labs, the ones that I help coordinate, we'll teach you how to dive into that literature and start to understand it.
I would also follow up and build on Dr. Quinn's suggestion and just read. Read everything that catches your eye. Read as much of it as you feel you like to. If you get tired of it, don't fight it and force yourself. Just put it aside and move on to something else. And there's a lot of good, well-written books that are amazingly accessible, that are great to read. Some of them not necessarily easy, but when they start becoming tiresome, put them aside. Right now, you're gonna laugh, but I picked up Walden again. It is not easy to read, but the guy has some really good insight about natural systems. And in that tradition, there have been many other authors who have strong insights about natural systems that present them in a much easier to access format. I would say anything by David Quammen would be great. And the other thing I would say is try to get outside and look around for your own. Just do what it takes to and take a walk and look around and notice what's happening around. Right now, if you go for a walk, you'll notice that the leaves are starting to change and drop, and realize that that is a function of where you are and when you are seeing it. And it will not be the same if you go north or south, and it may not be the same 20 years from now or 50 years from now. And so, yeah, look around
And enjoy yourself. That's
and
what
enjoy your.
I hear
Yeah,
us saying.
if,
It's not
if,
punishment, guys. It's
yeah,
enjoy.
no, but if you ever find yourself not enjoying it, see, I find great enjoyment. But if you don't enjoy it, put it aside.
And what's the update on Wild Basin? Is it open for visitors right now?
It is.
By reservation.
It's on reservation, and you have to be a little lucky and plan a little bit ahead to get in if you're a member of the general public.
Got it. Well, it's something that could be interesting to some of our prospective students who, if they're in the Austin area, they can, of course, visit our campus and walk around, but Wild Basin may also be an option for them if they want to see potentially where they might be doing research in the future. So that's why I mentioned
I'm
that.
working on some research out there right now. There's my email address. If
Perfect.
it's available and you feel like it, I may be able to get you in, and I'll show you where we're doing some research out there. One of the people we didn't name is a guy named Darren Prope. Dr. Prope is a nationally renowned figure in human, that is anthropogenic noise and its impact on natural systems. And he's got a beautiful research project going on out there right now.
That's great stuff. So students, feel free to contact any of the professors. Their contact information is here on the screen. Any final thoughts before we finish?
Great. No, I'm very, I'm grateful. I'm
Yeah.
just want to thank you all.
We'd love to see you.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you on campus very soon.